Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish off today with the last special selection of a week, and that's where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you'd like to submit your own special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's special selection comes at us from John. It says Bethlehem, Schatten Aus Alexander Welt. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Also says, I made a special request for the Bethlehem song but forgot to add a note. I want to say the song describes a nightmare the vocalist experienced, and since he had at the time been a drug abuser and problem, had a drug abuse and some mental health issues, that is also something to try to express through the music. The band were also one of the first DSBM, depressive suicidal black metal, which is a subgenre in black metal which the lyrical themes are suicidal, depression, self-harm, etc. Alright, so thanks for the content warning. Definitely I'm going to get in the right mindset to dig into this, and if anybody doesn't want to hear that, they are more than welcome to skip to the analysis section using the chapters selection thing that YouTube has, or also it's very honorable just to duck out and save your mental health or whatever, so no shame in that either. Let's dig into this and see what Bethlehem is bringing to the table. What is going on here?
Und erwarte mit besessener Hingabe die erlösende Begierde meines vielgefressenen
I like the drumming intensity in this very solemn moment. Interesting placement for the symbol there. So that the bell on the right symbol, it's like right hand and behind me, but the drums are all center in front of me. Okay. Dude, the symbol is just I'm waiting for those wild double bass kicks again. Ooh. Yeah, shifting up the accents. Usually, YouTube recommends are pretty varied after the fact. And here they gave me 4 tracks from the same album. Like they know there's nothing else like this. You should just check out more of this Bethlehem stuff. um, I think I forgot to breathe during that song. I don't usually yawn after a song's over. That's what. Oh man, what? All right. I guess the way this is gonna work is we're gonna discuss what the song's doing without talking about the vocals. Then we're gonna talk about the vocals and what they do to change things that the song's doing. And I'm kind of afraid to look at the lyrics, but it's the only way to get a full appreciation of a track, so we'll do that third. Alright, just trying to compose my thoughts here. So, we got a pretty comprehensive rundown of how black metal started last week. We saw the origins, looking at the beginnings of extreme and speed metal influences from stuff like Motorhead, all the way to bands like Celtic Frost that began to actually utilize the lo-fi. I think it was Celtic Frost. They utilized the lo-fi sound effect or sound profile and the beginnings of that black metal harsh vocal style. And we even saw a little bit of the second wave stuff when we checked out Psy, which was, from what I understand in the comments, kind of like a bridge between the first and the second wave movements. A little bit of inspiration from both, being that it did come out after the second wave stuff started to, but regionally they might not have heard a lot of that second wave yet to be directly influenced from it. And we've checked out some black metal in the last 2 years or so that we've been doing the channel. So I feel like I have a pretty strong understanding of what's going on musically here. And I have a strong appreciation for it just because it is a very specific vibe. You know, uh, early black metal we found out was kind of derived from speed metal. And we saw a lot of tremolo playing, but with more of a static element to it. 4 bar riffs where 3 bars are riding a pedal note, and the fourth bar typically has a little run in it that breaks up that monotone strumming. In more modern black metal, we see something more like this, where we have that tremolo picking still, we have the fuzz, but we aren't staying on one note anymore. There's a lot of movement in here. And I think it's really interesting to take music like this and, at least for me, to look at it divorced from the tremolo picking. Listen to the notes as if they were whole notes and half notes. And I think it's really interesting to see the overall flow and direction of some of these lines. I don't really want to call them melodies. They are, in a sense, but I don't think that they're strong enough musically to be a melody, but they're not foundationally or supportive enough to be called foundational aspects. It's not laying down the groundwork for a melody to play over. They're sort of in between, where texturally they are providing more of a foundation work, but there is a more movement in it that sort of makes it want to take the spotlight, but it isn't really at that point to be a strong melody. So it's a really interesting medium point where we end up seeing the guitar play two roles, which works very well given that in this style of music we tend to have harsh vocals that sometimes, I don't know how frequently, but at least sometimes, tends to have less range movement in it. It tends to be more rhythmic, kind of taking a specific sound and playing around with it rhythmically, since a lot of harsh vocals don't have tones to them. Well, they have overtones and undertones, but they don't have like a specified tone that sort of resonates in the middle. It's sort of this collection of tones that kind of get turned into this sound, the harsh vocal. So the guitars are needed to do both roles. And we kind of saw some of that here, although the vocals were a lot more expressive and dynamic, so it wasn't necessarily, like I said, a necessity for this song. But we see that the guitars are doing both roles. They are being more of a structural element as far as the texture goes. They have that crunch and that grit on it that allows it to fill out this floor. But there's also movement to it. Movement to the lines themselves. We play this note, then we move up to this note, then we do this note, then that note. And like I said, if you kind of divorce it from the tremolo picking, you get a series of whole notes and quarter notes, but it's, whole notes and half notes primarily, but it's all single note lines. We don't have any dyads or triads here. And I think both guitars were playing the same thing in a lot of these sections too, so we weren't even seeing any harmonies that would help build out this floor. It was really just this display of raw power of this single note being held out over these long periods of time, albeit with a ton of attacks that fill out this floor, while also providing a semblance of melody that the drums and vocals can rhythmically dance around. And we actually saw quite a few of these ideas, and I think that's one of the things that modern black metal always surprises me on, is the complexity of its variations of these short melodic riffs. We actually saw, what was this, like a 4.5 minute song, and there were probably 5, 6, maybe 7 different riffs in here. And that's more than we see in a lot of these more simplistic style genres. These genres that rely on more simplicity. Or I guess not again. For this, I am saying this again, but for people who this might be their first video of me talking, simplicity is not a bad thing. It's just a tool in a toolbox. Some bands wield it very well. Sometimes simplicity goes by and is not wielded very well. And I think that's the times when it gets a bad name. The song's too simple and it bores me, that kind of idea. But simplicity doesn't have to be boring, and you can actually find a lot of complexity through simplicity. And that's something we're seeing here, where they have a very simple idea, a very simple structure, a very simple layering of voices. And they find ways to keep it fresh throughout. One of those ways is the vocals. we'll get on that in a second. They definitely stole the show, that's for sure. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting elements in the guitar, and of course, we don't always see this tremolo picking. Anyways, we have that one section that we revisited at the end, which was that more subdued, pensive element. And we just had these really nice, slow, like playing a chord one note at a time. These full chord strums, just a lot of space between each of these notes. And yeah, so there's a lot of nice contrast in here despite the simplicity on the surface. We have a lot of guitar riffs. We have contrast in the riffs based on what they're doing. And then we also have contrasting atmospheres. This chill versus this drive, right? And the chill, I don't mean that like relaxed, just slower than the tremolo picking that we saw in like 80% of the song. So even the drumming showcases some of this, where they are all over the place, right? They've got some ridiculous speed during the faster parts. We get to the slower section, and they're more ornamental, right? It's about the little elements, about adding, one bass kick per bar or whatever, and really allowing that space to breathe in contrast to the faster, more frantic playing. However, the drummer, much like the guitarists with their variety of riffs, got some tricks up his sleeve. So first of all, that ride cymbal bell, drummer loves it. It is in so many places, and it is rhythmically groovy. So even though we might have more of a standard, very rigid quarter note alternating bass kick and snare idea going on during the faster sections, you tune in to the bell and the ride cymbal. And what I mean by that is, your cymbal's very wide, but as you get closer to the center, it kind of has this rounded curve up, right? That's the bell of the cymbal, and it has a very different timbre. Actually, the entire cymbal has a different timbre depending on where you hit it. But at least to me, I can't tell the difference between hitting a cymbal in the middle and hitting on the edge for the most part. I can tell the difference between hitting the flat part and hitting the bell. It's typically brighter and sharper. But there's a dulling to it in the production, which I think is interesting. There's actually a lot of dulling going on as far as removing any abrasiveness to attacks. Everything kind of has this rounded off softness, the guitars and the drums. And it kind of just gives it this. I think the whole thing's muffled. That might be it. And again, this just goes along with the black metal lo-fi element. Anyways, we're talking about the ride cymbal here. For some reason, it's placed to the right, and at least for me, it sounds a little bit behind me. The rest of the drum kit is centered. I don't remember hearing any toms. Usually toms are going to get panned out just a little bit to give some movement to the drums. But I don't remember hearing anything drum related on the left. Like this one cymbal really got isolated to listen to, I would suppose, because it's got some really slick stuff going on in it. And so, like I said, the drums, you're going to get this alternating bass and snare, just really emphasizing the downbeats, just this repetitive assault, right? It goes right along with the tremolo picking that's going on in the guitars. It's this really rhythmic rigidity to it. And then you get the cymbal, it's like I don't know if any of that came through because I have some noise reduction on this, but I really hope so. But yeah, so it has like these really groovy syncopated hits to it all throughout, and it it is fun. It completely destroys my mood listening to what's going on in the rest of the band. The rest of the band is this rigid, really focusing on downbeats, equalness between downbeats and offbeats. Just this constant attack, right? This eighth note rigid, constant assault. And then you got this really jazzy, groovy bell thing going on that's isolated. It's not even like I had to look for it. It was directed into my ear hole. I couldn't avoid it. And it happened like 2 or 3 times when it's just doing something that's rhythmically in contrast to what the rest of the band is doing. And this isn't the first time that the drums, I felt, completely destroyed the atmosphere. In the very first chill section, The drums started out rather muted, like I said earlier, just kind of, hitting a bass kick and snare every once in a while, putting a little, cymbal splash here and there, maybe the hi-hats going. Very subdued and muted. But in the second half of the first time we're in this section, there's some really interesting double bass gallops, like two eighth note kicks in the bass, and then like these funky offbeat snares, and yeah, like we're supposed to be in this really pensive, solemn kind of heavy, right? The rest of the song is weight of assault, and this is weight of feeling. It's an emotional weight rather than a physical weight. And then the drums are just putting on this funky display. And it just goes completely against the emotion everybody else is dropping it. And I was waiting for it to pop up in the second time that we went to that solemn section, and it didn't. So I'm kind of intrigued about what's going on there. But every time I start to get a feel for what the band is trying to achieve, the drummer's like, "Nah, let's do something else." And I love it because it's a subversion of expectation. I've listened to quite a bit of black metal now, and I feel like I have an understanding of what to expect at least. And this drummer just never let me have what I'm expecting. And I think that's phenomenal, but also it kind of is counterintuitive depending on what their goals and aims might have been. If I look into the lyrics later and maybe they're a bit tongue in cheek, I'm like, okay, everything fits together. If the lyrics are played straight, especially if they're working within this depressive black metal, dude, that jazzy ride cymbal is going to feel so out of place. So, intent is really important when it comes to things like this. But to me, I think I laughed a couple of times during the video, and it was always because of the drummer, and I don't want that to seem like disrespect, but to me, some of the musical things in here seemed like punchlines. Musical jokes being told. Music is a language just like any other, and you can tell comedy, sorrow, uh, elation. You can take people on journeys just with music, no lyrics needed. Music can bring people to tears, it can cheer them up. Music tells stories as long as you're listening. And comedy is a style of storying, and once you know what to listen for, music can be funny. And that's what happened here. There were jokes told throughout here, or at least subversions of expectations for me. And I'm, like I said, I don't quite know if they were intended or not, but we'll dig into that in a bit. All right, so next up is vocals. And man, kind of dreaded getting here. I think I kind of stretched the last section out just a little bit to push the vocals off a little. Well, we talk about songs with great thesis statements. Within the first 30 seconds of the song, you know what you're getting in for. These guys did that well. They came in heavy, they came in just brutal assault, and the vocalist let you know what he was about too. We got a deep growl, and then we got a banshee scream. And in the first 10 seconds, you know if you're going to turn this off or not. And I respect that. I really do. I think a song with a great thesis statement is the best way to go about writing music for the most part, at least for this style of reaction videos, right? Obviously, some stories need subtlety. You start out in a very different place than you end, right? Those songs take you on journeys. It doesn't make sense always to start with a thesis statement that showcased what you're doing. But I think for a pretty typical song like this, you're looking at under 6 or 7 minutes with a single vibe for the most part. Having a good thesis statement, let somebody know if they need to stick around or not. And I think they did a fantastic job with that. The vocalist, though, has some really interesting techniques. Now, I'm not a vocal coach, so everything I'm about to say could be very wrong. But we hear some growling, right? We got some false chord growling going on, which is a little different than the compressed fry that he utilizes at the other end of his range. Now, the interesting thing there, though, is that the compressed fry seems to be pitched. We hear a range. It's not like, he hits this area and then has a high, scream or something. No, I'm pretty sure I heard melodic movement in some of his lines. I heard very specific, minute notes. And it makes me wonder, then that's not a fry scream, right? That is a compressed clean. That's putting distortion, physical distortion, on a clean vocal. It's like combining fry with vocal cords, which, again, I'm not a vocal coach, but I've always heard that that's not the way to go about doing fries, that's kind of dangerous. But I've also heard some people in the past, I think Devin Townsend is one of them, who does that and continues to do it and seems to be in okay health. So I guess it's not dangerous. It's not dangerous as a whole. It's just more dangerous to do. Or I guess another way to put it would be it's easier to do it wrong. But the last time we checked out one of these depressive black metal bands, the requester also said that vocalists tend to utilize poor technique in an effort to harm themselves physically to align the themes of the music with what they're doing. So I suppose that also could be what's going on here. I don't know. But it's really interesting because it brings a new texture to the vocals. Right? This is something we don't get to hear too often because it's usually, people tell you not to do it. But there is this really interesting crackling that, at least to me, when we look at fry screaming, the crackle seems to be above the perceived pitch. Because, like I said, there's no real pitch. You're not using vocal cords and this kind of stuff. It really is all of the crackling kind of bouncing around your soft palate and stuff and amplifying the noise and the crackle and all of that. And you kind of get some overtones and undertones out of it, but there's no pitch that the vocalist is making. So this, though, has pitch to it, but the crackle, at least to me, feels under it. The crackle feels lower than the pitch is. Very different layering of the vocals than what I'm used to when I hear stuff like this. And then, like I said, there's also a range to it as well. I heard pitches, and not like a perceived pitch, but an actual pitch. Sounds like vocal cords are actually being utilized for some of these notes, especially some of the higher ones, where it feels like he's literally yelling, possibly belting, doing like a mixed chest and head sound note, and then putting compression under that, and it sounds more feral. I think that's the best way I can. It's more animalistic. It's more natural, right? The fry scream that is traditionally used does not feel very human. It's not a sound most humans make. We don't typically use our false chords to create noises. Other than, growls, I suppose snarls are kind of something that humans may have used in the past, probably still used today when they're trying to when they're trying to be scary or whatever. But the traditional fry scream is not a noise that I hear day to day, right? But that yell with the compression under it feels very human, whereas the fry scream doesn't. And that humanity adds a lot to the vocal performance for me. But it adds humanity, like a human element of pain, right? It makes it feel more visceral, at least, again, just my experience with this type of vocal production. And it adds that extra layer onto this depressive black metal, because it seems to be that there is this element of self-harm going on. Even if there isn't, it sounds like there's deterioration going on of the vocals. If I tried to do that, my throat would hurt, and if I continue to do it, I'd probably begin to lose part of my voice. No different than, yelling all night, singing along at a concert, and, losing some of your vocal volume the next day. Which, as a kid, I didn't know, but that's straight up vocal damage. If you're doing that, you should probably stop. Um, Again, I'm not a vocal coach, so I don't take my advice. Go ask somebody who knows what they're talking about. Um, but yeah, so like I said, it adds to what they're doing here. It adds to the feeling, the visceral aspect of the music, because they're utilizing more human sounds, while also, at least in the back of my mind, it sounds like it's also doing damage to their vocal cords. So yeah, it's a very interesting, and of course, it's just, to me, I don't like it. I don't like that sound. I appreciate what he's going for. I respect the craft. I respect whatever is going into making it. But it is not my type of vocal, and I think it just kind of adds to that abrasiveness that black metal has. Is this supposed to be black metal or death metal? I've been calling it black metal all day. Um, okay, so it is black metal. Um, just wanted to double check that real quick. Yeah, so black metal is already an abrasive genre for me. I'm not a big fan of it. I appreciate what it's doing. I tend to really enjoy the atmosphere. I like that the moodiness of it mixed with that constant attack from the tremolo picking and the fast drums. Like, there's an aggressive brutality to death metal. Not something I always want to listen to. It's a very abrasive sound. And I think utilizing these very raw, compressed vocals rather than the black vocal scream, or maybe a traditional growl, those seem a bit more musically processed in a sense. I kind of attribute those sounds to music. This I don't. I attribute this to a person in pain or in fear yelling for their life. Um, and it just adds to that abrasiveness, and I think it elevates what they're going for, that feeling, that vibe. So, yeah, just it's interesting. I don't enjoy it at all, but like with all art, it doesn't have to make me feel comfortable for me to appreciate it. And I guess we're going to dive into the lyrics now. And this is interesting. It's not in English, which is pretty cool. A hopefully accurate translation I'm looking at, the title translates to Shadows from the Alexander World, which either I'm not getting the reference there, or it's a bit of a rough translation that could probably be worked around into something that works better in English. Um, but it seems to be a four stanza song that is about an assassin who kills a king and possibly gets hanged for it, or somebody else gets hanged wrongfully. I don't know. It's very whimsical as far as the language goes. At least this translation um, says, "I shed the cursed blood of your childlike corpse and await with possessed dedication the redeeming desire of my much praised downfall. Thunder rises, and I feel like the tear whose thorn thrust deep into the pool of my prophecy." Like, it's very, very flowery language. Uh, it rolls off the tongue nicely. It has really great um, imagery to it, but it still just seems to be on the surface about assassinating a king. Which is interesting because John had mentioned that depressive suicidal black metal typically, at least, has lyrical themes of suicide, depression, and self-harm, and this seems to just be straight up fantasy. And there's no self-harm. There's definitely harm in here. uh, but it's not self-harm. It's just about an assassin killing a king. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here. Oh, actually, it does look like this person did get caught. He says, "Bear destruction blows round my thighs. The middle can no longer be kept, and it took only 2 shots to kill the." So yeah, there's suffering being or injury being applied to this person, the narrator. But yeah, I don't know. I'm missing something. It's an interesting track nonetheless, though, musically at least. Um, and I think that the way that the song sounds musically, at least, not looking at the lyrics, I mean the vocals, fits kind of this mood of this fantasy medieval kind of vibe. People coming in at night to assassinate people, like it works. We have the aggression, the intensity, the anxiety, all of that energy being present. But then we also have these moments of downtime where those two chill sections that could fit within this narrative very well of just kind of chilling and waiting. And I'm sure as an assassin, you'd have to do that a lot. You got to plan your moves and act accordingly. Uh, as with before, I am not a trained assassin, so take my words with a bit of salt. Uh, anyways, those are my thoughts on Bethlehem's Schatten Aus der Alexander Welt. And again, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong, and I apologize if I did. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track, if you enjoyed it or not, anything that stuck out to you. If you have an interpretation or a translation of the lyrics that would help me understand what's going on a little better, I'm down for that. Especially if you have a way to connect the lyrics with the vocal delivery. I think that's going to be a big one for me because um, these lyrics, I mean, the vocal delivery does not really seem to be the calm and composure an assassin would need. A little bit more frantic and maniacal. Oh, speaking of maniacal, there's even a laugh in there that was a bit maniacal. So, yeah. Anyways, go ahead and drop some comments when you're done. The description box above it has a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. You can submit your own special selections here. You can do other stuff. I blanked out. There's a bunch of stuff. Go check it out above the description box. If you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That wraps it up for today. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the final vocal harmonies song and create a request, which is where a band asks me to check out their music. And then we'll have the weekend, and there's stuff going on the weekend. Like there's probably going to be there's a live stream on Sunday for the patrons. I'm probably going to drop another blocked live stream video, so you guys can watch that on your own time. And yeah, that should be it. Anyways, also Monday, we'll be back next week with our next theme and whatnot. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC every single day. Well, at least Monday through Friday. You can catch me. And until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.